Yo, welcome back to another episode of the GUADCAST.
It's been a fucking while, but we're looking forward to talking about some new topics today. Mike Flanagan.
And he's got a lot going on. I mean, let's jump on the bandwagon here, guys. So, join us for the next episode. We're so excited to share this one with you. It's been a while, but hey guys, thanks for tuning in.
Hey guys, welcome back to the GUADCAST.
I bet you didn't think you were going to see us again.
We've crawled out of the void to bring you another episode after months of one fuck of a hiatus.
Yeah, no kidding. It's been a summer here in Canada, that's for sure.
It has. It really has.
So, today we're going to talk about, we kind of have a theme here. We like to talk about specific directors that we like.
Yeah.
And so we're kind of jumping on the bandwagon with this one, I think. But he's got a lot of good films that we've liked before.
Yeah. So we wanted to talk about, with all the hype around Midnight Mass, we wanted to talk about Flanagan, somebody who I've mentioned before on Terry's show. Even when he asked me who my favorite horror person was today, I said Mike Flanagan because I'm in love with his work. I've been following him. The only thing I haven't seen of his is Absentia.
Yeah, same.
And
I can't find it anywhere.
Yeah, same. I don't know if it's just a Canadian thing. Up here in the frozen north, they have a hard time bringing us films. It's
because the delivery takes so long because we have to drive on ice, and you have to go slower when you drive on ice.
And even digitally, the wires freeze. So even though it's been August and it's been hot as fuck here, the wires are still frozen.
Great White North. What are you gonna do?
Like the Night House, I think I just did a lightning review for that, and it was the same fucking thing. Everyone else got it 2 months ago, and I've been sitting here with a frozen popsicle in my hand.
What do you have to do? Canadians like their horror too, eh, bud?
Yeah, fucking A.
Jeez, fuck, bud, get a twofer.
Oh sure.
Oh man, jeez. Anyways, we're getting right off fucking topic. So we're gonna talk about Mike Flanagan, and maybe we can start because there's definitely a couple of things we want to mention.
Oh, for sure.
We've already kind of preempted what we want to talk about a little bit, but I wanted to start with Mike Flanagan and his style of film, and maybe I'll just start and you can kind of
jump for sure. That's usually your I'm more the story guy. You're more the cinematography. Yeah.
I love his films. If you're into slow burn, kind of really emotionally trauma-driven movies, then Mike Flanagan is
atmospheric, immersive.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm just jumping in.
It's all good.
He's really good at pulling you in and making you feel these characters.
Yeah, and his films and Midnight Mass and The Haunting of Hill House, they're all very much about grief and about these characters and the emotional trauma that they face, how that emotional trauma is even manifested into some kind of physical, intangible entity in a way, it be like another person or like your own delusions, your own warped reality, but somehow he manifests these characters' pain and trauma into something that they either confront or they don't, or that they heal from or that they don't heal from. And it's very much like a bit of an emotional roller coaster when you're watching a lot of his work too. Yeah,
so for sure, with specifically what you said with trauma, a lot of his, that's what kind of pulls you in with his style of horror. It really brings out the realism, the things that you can actually be afraid of. Even the creatures that he uses metaphorically are symbolic of, obviously, metaphorically, the creatures themselves represent something else. The ghosts represent trauma, addiction, fear, whatever it may be. And trauma and addiction tend to be two of his favorite topics. He kind of comes back to those quite regularly. Religion as well. Midnight Mass was not the first time he really talked about religion. It's the first time he's talked about it that in depth, but there was a lot of kind of religious undertones with other pieces that he's done as well. Specifically the duality of religion, or specifically the combat between atheism and belief. Though, I mean, never really brings in a lot of other belief structures, but he was raised Christian and is now an atheist, so that's kind of what's familiar to him, I suppose. So those are the kind of areas that he dabbles in. Yeah. But yeah, those are common themes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of times too, even when you speak about religion, and we've talked about that on the show before, that there is a lot of emotional background when it comes to religion. That, you know, a lot of times, specifically with Midnight Mass too, you can see things how religion can either, you know, connect and unite us or completely destroy us, right? And so again, that comes back to the emotional trauma behind it. Some of these, you know, religious zealots or people that struggle with their own faith. No, go ahead.
I just want to interject real quick. As always, if you haven't seen anything, if you haven't seen Midnight Mass yet, Midnight Mass is one that you will want to watch before watching the rest of this episode. I guarantee it. We're going to be talking probably about spoilers, most likely, because it's kind of the point and fact of the show. And if you get it revealed to you too soon, I feel like it might affect. I don't know. It might affect your viewing. It might not. Some people don't really care about that shit, but some people do.
And it's also nice to kind of go in blindfolded. At least I like it. I don't like surprise. I mean, I like surprises. I don't like spoilers. I don't want to know anything. I don't read anything about a film until after I've watched it.
Yeah, like I was even hesitant to watch the Scream trailer, but anyway.
Yeah.
So regardless, just keep that in mind. If you like Flanagan's work and you like his style, definitely go watch Midnight Mass. And then come back here, and then you can listen to us talk about it. Because, yeah, we're definitely going to talk about spoilers. Yeah. And we're not only talking about Midnight Mass, but if we happen to drop something, I don't want to be, oh, you didn't tell me. So you've been warned.
And then we're going to owe everyone a twofer.
Yeah, twofer. Fuck you, I'm giving you a twofer.
Do our American friends know what a twofer is?
I don't know. 24-pack.
A 24-pack of beer.
For a beer.
Hey, so it's a twofer. Twofer.
It's a twofer. It's a twofer up here in the Great White North.
Yep.
Great White North. Anyway, so yeah, I think
there's more I want to say about I kind of wanted to delve into his style a little bit more before we talk about.
Yeah, we said style, and then we talked about theme.
Yeah, well, I mean, like they go hand in hand, really.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
So like we were like kind of just to circle back to what we were saying before, we always get a little derailed when we talk about religion here. We talked about earlier, about 8 minutes ago, about how his films and his storytelling is very much slow burn. You can see that it's very evident specifically with Midnight Mass. Like you said, it's atmospheric. And his storytelling is very much character driven and the emotional trauma, like I said. But what we see with Flanagan's storytelling is that he takes a character or characters and he puts them into a scene and a setting, and the story unfolds around his characters.
Yes.
The characters always come first in his storytelling, which is a very, very powerful tool that he uses, and he uses well, because when you watch his films or something like Midnight Mass, you are interested in these characters. You're interested in how their story unfolds, their beginning, their middle, their end. And it's because they're also emotionally charged, but because he focuses his storytelling on them and then unfolds the story around them. Where if you watch something like maybe a popular culture or pop culture kind of horror movie like The Conjuring, when you watch The Conjuring is very much about the story first. The characters are just happen to be random characters placed in that scene, placed in that setting, thrown into that story, and the story is the front runner there, and the characters just happen to be subjected to the witch on the property of the house. But Flanagan doesn't do that. All his stories stories are character driven first, right?
They start with scares too. Like I noticed, like the entire Conjuring series, which despite how a lot of people shit on the Conjuring, I actually enjoy the 3 Conjuring films.
Yeah, me too. Like I didn't say that to shit.
No. I know that. I just want to be very clear. A lot of people think it's like it's this kind of it's a dirty thing to like the Conjuring movies. I mean, the expanded universe is bullshit, but like the original 3 films, or the original 3, the new one just came out. But anyway,
but the first one's really
the 3 Conjuring movies I enjoy. I enjoy their style for what they are. I mean, I'm not, but they start with scares. They start with something happening. Whereas with Flanagan, specifically with Midnight Mass, it starts with a horrendously traumatic event for the main character. Well, the main character kind of shifts a lot, but Riley, it starts with this horrible event in his life that is basically the pivotal point of how his life changes. It doesn't start with Father Priot. It doesn't start with the church. It doesn't start with the creatures. It doesn't start with any of that. It starts with this event in Riley's life, and I think that kind of is solidifying the kind of point that you're making about Flanagan characters first.
Yeah, he's character driven in his storytelling. Yeah, and I love that about him. One more thing. Sorry, I didn't want to jump in on you. There's one more thing I want to mention about his filming technique, and then maybe if you want to, we can jump into some movies or some of his films. There's another thing that Flanagan does that is. It's not unique to him, I don't think, but it's something that he utilizes well, is that a lot of his filming technique is having the actors close up in the camera, and then you kind of see something going on in the background. And he utilizes a lot of those, like, traditional horror scares really well. So like something like Before I Wake or Oculus, where you see the actors close up in the front, and then you see like the figure in the doorway, or some of those kinds of, traditional scares.
The ghosts in the background in Haunting of Hill House, in Bly Manor as well.
Yeah, and he really utilizes his actors in the front. He directs them really well in their kind of intimate space, and he also highlights so well what's going on in the background, right? So your attention is divided, and it's kind of like trippy to watch it, because there's 2 things going on, foreground and background.
That carries on the point we've made before about Carpenter and like how he utilizes space.
Yeah.
Right? Flanagan does the same thing, but more claustrophobic.
Yeah.
And he makes it more about, now it's more personal with this person or these people. Like, and that's how so it's that space utilization, the same thing, but for a completely different effect.
And I think he does that because his stories are character driven. Yeah. Because he wants you to feel the intimacy of this character. He wants you to feel like, he wants you to care about them, so he puts them up close to you. He makes you, notice them and notice their story and care about them, right? Another quick thing I wanted to mention too, going off of his filming technique like that, a lot of times when you see that the actor close up in front of the camera, and then the background and things going on, what Flanagan does a lot too is he controls his scene very well. So the camera will be stationary showing a scene, and then what Flanagan does is moves the camera to reveal the scene to the audience. He controls his scenes, where a director like Oz Perkins, that we've talked about before, Oz Perkins leaves the camera stationary and literally just lets the scene reveal itself to you, like specifically I'm the pretty thing that lives in this house, where she's just doing her thing and everything's going on in the background, or the darkness is ensuing, and Perkins will just leave his camera still and let the scene reveal itself, where Flanagan controls the scene and he moves his camera and he reveals it to you, which neither of the filming techniques are either right or wrong. They're just, each director has their own flair. It's
different tool in the medium, right?
But it's something I noticed with Flanagan specifically, and I like it. Like, I'm a huge fan of Perkins, and I like how Perkins leaves the camera still. So it's kind of interesting for me to watch Flanagan all of a sudden see how he moves his camera so much. I'm like, I like it though. It works for me. It's different styles.
Yeah, no, but you're right. But to carry off, like, we talked a little bit about how he uses sound even, right? And how
oh my gosh.
Big spoiler here, just now, this is your last chance. When Riley dies in Midnight Mass, and they have the scene where it shows him and it shows the girl that he's like kind of, the sun is rising and he's in that dream that he keeps having, and it's quiet and it's peaceful and it's really calm, and they're filming this shot, and then all of a sudden it cuts drastically back to Kate Siegel's character screaming hysterically because he's burning alive in the sun, right? And it's so sudden and clips so quickly, and he's done that kind of thing before in other works of his, where he just cuts to something else, like in Oculus, where the brother's standing there and he thinks that the mirror has killed, or he's broken the mirror, but he's killed his sister with it instead, and it snaps to this drastic thing, and in that one it's not like screaming or anything, but it's just like the sounds of his sister dying there, like she's like gurgling on
her blood.
Yeah, so like just his way of using sound, or when again,
and in Hush.
Yeah, in Hush, it's all about sound manipulation.
Yeah,
right?
and amplifying the sound that we hear that this lady with disabilities can hear, right? Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in, but yeah, like you're right, like just the way
the apple scene where he bites into the apple, but it makes the sound of a broken bulb. In Oculus,
that's the sister that does
that.
that.
Oh yeah. Sorry. Yeah, and she bites into it, and it makes it's still an apple, but like you hear the sound, and then it cuts down, and it's something else.
Yeah.
Like again, sound. The way he uses sound in editing a scene is very it's very tactful and deliberate, and that's one thing I really appreciate specifically with the scene with Riley, and I can't remember Kate Siegel's character in the show.
Aaron.
Aaron.
Is it Aaron? Yeah. So my trick or treat lollipop was moving.
Yeah, the ghosts just got.
Eat me.
But yeah, just how hard that scene just punches you right in the stomach and like knocks the wind out of you, because like it's so calm, and then all of a sudden she's just screaming hysterically, and then it carries on into the credits just to keep that effect going, and it's powerful stuff. It's effective. It's
a very, very emotionally charged scene, and the thing is too, I think at that point we kind of know that it's vampirism going on in this little house,
yeah, I think
right?
they revealed it like an episode just before that.
Yeah, so we kind of know, and so when we see the sun starting to rise, we're expecting, oh my god, Riley's gonna kill himself. And you're expecting a death, you're expecting something, but you don't, like, sometimes you expect things to be so like, oh my god, he's burning, he's on fire, and it's just so dramatic. But Flanagan does make it dramatic, but in the most unsuspecting way, because of his utilization of sound and amplifying that kind of sound where it's completely dead silent, and then Riley sees a scene of the dead girl that he hit when he was drunk driving, and you can tell, oh, he's passing over. Oh wait, I didn't realize this death scene was going to be so calm.
And then it cuts. It was as jarring, except you don't like the character, so it's not in Saint Maud. It was as jarring as that death, but you don't like her character, so it doesn't hit you the same. But like she's like ascending to heaven, and then it cuts to what's actually happening, and she's just immolated herself, and she's screaming to death on the beach.
Yeah.
And it's like the same kind of just drastic, sharp change of tone, so dramatically that it's like, whoa, okay. And then it just ends, and it's so abrupt and quick in how it does it, and that's why it's effective.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, yeah.
So talking about how Flanagan really utilizes sound, maybe we should talk about Hush first, because this movie is really all about sound, or the lack thereof.
Yeah.
And so first of all, the movie came out in 2016, and we have a premise about a woman who they make a lot of kind of nods at Stephen King too. She's a novelist, right? And she's working on her second book, and it's actually, what is it? It's Midnight Mass, right? Yeah. And so the idea of this movie is we don't actually know this serial killer and his motive. Like, why did he kill the neighbor? Why did he come get her? I guess he saw that her disabilities would kind of make it more of a fun game for him. Like, he's the cat, she's the mouse kind of thing, right?
Yeah, he just gets kicks out of torturing people.
Yeah.
Like, fucking with them. Like,
yeah, exactly. So this whole movie is kind of Mike Flanagan's spin on the damsel in distress, the home invasion kind of film, which typically you and I don't like home invasion films. And when this first came out, I was actually a little bit opposed to watching it.
I avoided it. I only watched it. I watched it during COVID lockdown finally, because I was like just going through films that I just was like, okay, I'm gonna watch it now, and this was one of them. Yeah.
And I was kind of a little bit on the fence about watching it, because I don't really like home invasion movies.
Neither do I.
But I loved this one. And so the main character, Kate Siegel, she is a novelist who's deaf and mute. She had some kind of, what was it? meningitis disability when she was like 13, and it took away her.
I don't remember the details. Like,
I don't remember her because it's been but the idea of this film is the script is really, really clever. Obviously, his storytelling is pretty superb. But again, so it focuses on this character who's deaf and mute. She's a novelist working on her second book, and the idea what she's doing is a serial killer. It wants to kill her, just wants to torment her and fuck with her for whatever sadistic reason he wants to do it for. And she really has to use her kind of creativity and her imagination as a novelist to help fight for her own survival.
But she can't hear how much of a noise she's making. And the movie keeps bringing that out. Like, she is trying to gauge how much noise she's making without being able to actually hear that she's making noise.
Yeah.
Right? Which, I mean, I can't even imagine. Like, but it's so clever the way he does it and the way he portrays it in the film, with, like, her trying to open the windows and things like that. So, and just, I mean,
it's all in the acting. You can
even
tell
when she's loading the crossbow and it's hurting her hands and she's like biting down on her, like, to not make a noise while she's doing it, because it's like it requires so much effort and she's not strong enough to do it, and she's like cutting her hands all up. Things like that or the scene where he's murdering the friend or the neighbor or whatever, and she's just in the kitchen doing whatever because she can't hear it, and she's like banging on the window while he's like stabbing her to death, and it's almost comedic, right? Because it's something you'd expect to see in like Scary Movie or something, right? But it's given the movie and the way it's done, it's not played off for a laugh. It's played off. It's a scare because of the fact that she can't hear it, right?
And that scene, I'm glad you brought it up because it touches on two of his very strong filmy techniques. One, the sound, when she's scraping the vegetables off and you see in the background the friend being like stabbed to fucking death, and
which is the crazy bitch from Midnight Mass.
That from Midnight Mass, Zealot. And she's scraping the vegetables and there's no sound, you don't hear anything because we're hearing it from the perspective of the deaf novelist, right? I forget what her name is, Jessie or something. I don't know, maybe not. Anyways, no, Jessie's from Gerald's Game. What am I talking about? Anyways, we don't hear any sound, and then all of a sudden it jumps to outside, and the friend's being stabbed. We hear these big sound noises of like flesh and bone crunching and being stabbed. And so what Flanagan is doing is he's overemphasizing and really amplifying this sound that we would hear that this main character, the protagonist, doesn't hear because she's deaf, right? So it's kind of setting up the scene already that this is her vulnerability and it's going to be used against her by this killer. And there's another thing too in these scenes, like, well, I mean, like, you know, like the loud chopping of vegetables kind of mimics the loud stabbing of the woman, right? So that kind of like amplifying of sound, like I said. And then the other technique here that's very evident of Flanagan's is when there's the close-up of her scraping the vegetables because she burnt her dinner because she can't cook worth a shit, and she's so distracted obviously by not being able to write her second book, so she's scraping the vegetables in the garbage. Nice close-up, right? She's close up in the frame. What's going on in the background? The friend's being murdered, right? And that's what we talked about. Like, he sets a very intimate scene of a background and a foreground and how they contrast so much, right? Not only with sound but with action. And Mike Flanagan does that constantly in all of his films, and it's so... Man, it gives me goosebumps. I love it.
The thing, while we're talking about Hush,
I'm sorry.
While we're talking about Hush, when we were preparing for this episode, we talked about a little bit about each movie, like we always do, and you brought up the scene where he takes the mask off, and like that's literally my favorite scene in the movie because. And we were talking about how people were like, oh, that's stupid, why would he do that? Like, blah, blah, blah. It's because this guy is literally so ruthless. And he really doesn't give a fuck. He wants you to know, yeah, this is me. Go ahead, try to say something. Like, I really don't give a shit that you know who I am. Like it's literally how, like, what that means when he does that. Like, I don't care. What are you gonna do? Like, you can't talk, you can't hear. What are you going to do? You can't do anything. I'm gonna get you. You can't reveal who I am. Like,
and he's like, I'm the cat, you're the mouse, and I'm coming in there to kill
I'm
you.
in control, and this is how in control I am. Right?
Yeah.
It's just this power trip situation, and
all the cards are on the table. He's like, I don't give a shit if you know my identity. All I care about is coming in there to get you. And then the movie, as you see it kind of, the script, how it reveals itself, is very much about these two characters, the novelist who's trying to survive, and the killer who's trying to break in to kill this woman. How it's... And this is why I love the script, because I think it's really intelligently crafted and executed, is it's really much about these two characters trying to outsmart each other. Mm-hmm. Right? That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
And it's...
Well, it's like you said, that cat and mouse situation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Anyways, I don't want to talk too much about Hush because we got a lot of films to go through. But we're not going to get into the in-depth of all of them. Of course, there's two specific ones that we're going to save for last. Big surprise, I'm sure you know what they are. But Before I Wake, 2016. So, again, another, not so much of a slow burn, kind of a slow burn, but atmospheric horror. Again, we got two characters that are very... very emotional, very traumatized. We had a little boy who lost his mother to how we find out is cancer. We got a mother and a father, but more so it's focused on the mother and how she just lost her son, right? So again, a very emotionally charged film. Flanagan's kind of fun little spin on the boogeyman.
Mm-hmm. More of a dark fantasy with horror moments.
And there's some really beautiful imagery he brings in with, like you said, with the fantasy. He brings in like the sparkly...
It's like butterflies and I think there's like trees or something as well.
Yeah, and it has that bit of kind of dreamscape feel to it.
It gives me like a Del Toro flair, like Guillermo del Toro.
And it's funny because they gave me like a Nightmare on Elm Street kind of flair with the dreamscape.
Yeah.
I don't think there's too much to really say about this film, except, again, it's about how people choose to heal, if they choose to heal, if they choose to move on, and how they choose to move on.
How their trauma, literally the creature that's haunting him is his dying mother.
Yeah, right? How you manifest your own fears into something physical and tangible, like I said at the beginning of this episode. And that is what he calls the Canker Man, this little boy, but it's actually cancer, as we find out. So I like how Flanagan touches on the idea here in this film. It's not his best film, I don't think, but I still enjoyed it. But the power of your dreams and the power of your nightmares, right? And so I thought it was kind of like a nice little life lesson to understand. I wrote down her quote, actually. She says, sometimes scary things go away when we understand them. And the mother said that to the little boy at the very beginning when she started fostering him, because that's the thing, like when we find out, like, okay, this is something that's traumatizing me, but when I face it, when I confront it, then there's the time that you can heal if you choose to heal. And that's what this movie is about.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's quite literally the point of the film.
Yeah, and I like that because, we all have our own emotional trauma. And so I just thought that quote at the very beginning of the movie was a nice kind of foreshadow and setup of this film. There's not too much to say. I don't know if you want to say anything and we can move on, but...
No, not really. Just, it gives me Guillermo del Toro vibes with the fantasy. It's kind of got the same flair from, like, not to the extent, but it's kind of got, like, a Pan's Labyrinth kind of dark fantasy vibe.
Yeah.
Spooky fairy tale type of thing. Other than that, no, that's pretty much it. And I think the creature design was interesting as well.
Yeah.
The decrepit kind of, and then especially when you find out what it's representing, you're like, oh fuck, that's what it does to people.
That's the cancer, right? That the little boy saw his mother dying of cancer. He was 3 years old. He didn't know what he was seeing. And
in his mind, it became this monster, gangly thing.
Yeah, exactly.
The point is very powerful, even though the movie is kind of simple.
And he loved his mom and he missed his mom, but he literally, his trauma made him afraid of what happened to his mother. He didn't understand that she died of cancer, and it became something that haunted him, right? And then he manifested that fear, and it started killing the people around him. Anyways, that's there's not too much to say about that.
I would like to mention that we're not going to talk about three technically, because we're not going to talk about Absentia because we haven't seen it.
Yeah.
And two, we're not going to talk about the Stephen King adaptations. One, they're super controversial for people that have read the Stephen King stuff, and I don't want to get into it. Dr. Sleep and Gerald's Game. I love Gerald's Game, and I think it's a very accurate adaptation, and the way it deals with trauma it's an incredible story. But I just think I have too much to say about Gerald's Game, and Dr. Sleep is a ball of wax I don't even want to get into. Even though I love both of those films, I love both of those books, I don't really want to talk about the films. And I think we're on the same page with that. We wanted to talk about Flanagan's original works more.
Yeah, totally.
I guess Hill House, it's not really an original work, but...
No, like
it's his own spin on it, whereas the other two are like direct adaptations, whereas Hill House and Bly Manor are more... his own spin on his own creative take of a different story.
And we also mentioned that it's important later on to talk about The Haunting of Hill House because of how much it affected the audience, how big of an impact it had on people who maybe not are even into horror, but watch it because, oh, it's Halloween season, I want to watch something spooky, and then they watch Haunting of Hill House, and they're like, holy fuck, you know.
I'd say it's loosely based on the novel.
Yeah, the Shirley Jackson novel. Yeah. Why don't we actually? I'm sorry, I don't mean to just jump, but why don't we just quickly mention Oculus because that's one of his really terrifying horror. movies.
Yeah, I'm down to talk about Oculus
2014.
Because yeah, Oculus was one that I watched almost right away. When I first learned about Flanagan, it was one of the first things I looked into. Because one of the guys I follow on YouTube talked about it, and I was like, holy fuck, that sounds amazing, and I watched it because mirrors, as like, the only other mirror horror movie I'd seen was the one with Reefer Sutherland that I made a joke about on my Lightning.
Reefer Sutherland? You just call him Reefer
I always call him Reefer. I'm calling that in the fucking video, in the
Hey, isn't he Canadian though?
Yeah, but, so, yes, he's Reefer Sutherland.
Oh, that makes sense, I get it.
Fucking burnouts in this country. Anyway, so we
talking about Oculus and mirrors.
Yeah, so Mirrors was the only movie I had seen with like mirrors being as specifically like a horror entity, and it wasn't done very well. It was done really well in 30 Coins as well, by the way. There's a haunted mirror.
I'll watch it eventually. Go fuck yourself.
There's a haunted mirror in that, and that's fucking great. 30 Coins, excellent show, by the way. But yeah, so Oculus and the way that this mirror is like a soul consuming, like, what the fuck is it? Doesn't really, but like it alters perception and reality, but it literally drains all life around it into it. Like it's like a vampire, but like
just sucking the life out of everything around it. Yeah, like, but that's the one thing about this film too. Flanagan doesn't explain what the mirror is, really.
Where it's from,
it's just like,
what it is.
Seemingly a haunted mirror that's been around for a very long time and collected, about 48 souls, I think was the death count?
Well, that's as far back as she had record of. Like, so we get, like, a little bit of an exposition part, which isn't much of an exposition, really. It's just kind of like all the victims this thing is taken. But it doesn't really explain what the thing is, where it's from, what it's done. I don't think they'd ever talk about who made it or what.
No, nothing. Yeah.
Like, it just came in, someone found it at a whatever, and, like, that was, like, the first account of it or some shit like that.
And the story, again, is about these two kids, this brother and sister. So, sister and brother. Just kidding. And them as kids, and what this mirror does to their parents, and how they watch this mirror kind of destroy the lives of their parents, and how it affects them, and basically traumatizes them to the point that it's still what this mirror did to them as kids still haunts them as adults. And so when the kids come back into the house as adults to confront the mirror, firstly, this is Mike Flanagan's spin on now a haunted house movie. It's a psychological horror, where the other one was a boogeyman, and then the other one was a home invasion. This is his spin on a haunted house movie. And these two kids were traumatized, and now they're trying to pretty much grasp and struggle with reality, because this mirror keeps merging the timelines of these kids.
Yeah, and it jumps quite back and forth. Seamlessly almost, because there's scenes where it's showing the mother walking down the hall, and then it cuts and it's the daughter as a child, and then it's back to her being an adult, and it kind of jumps around. But how it does it is so effective, that in the way that it's telling the story, that it makes sense to do it that way.
And the film becomes, as it unfolds, the film becomes so deceptive and ambiguous, because there's these two timelines that it jumps back and forth between. The kids, when the mirror first comes into their house, and them as kids, and what the trauma that they go through, and then the timeline is the present timeline of them as adults coming back to the house, back to the mirror to confront it. But throughout the movie, these two separate timelines of past and present start to fucking merge. They merge into one timeline. So sometimes you see the adult sister with the kid brother or vice versa. And I'm like, it's so trippy. And the mirror is just warping the reality to the point where, like you mentioned, she bites into an apple. You hear the crunch and you think it's a light bulb and it's the apple, right? And
or the brother, the scene that anytime there's like a weird sound in someone's dream and then they wake up, that's the kind of shit that actually freaks me out. So, because I don't like sleeping. But like,
little slices of death.
Yeah, like it's literally, but you're literally completely vulnerable when you're sleeping. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So to me,
that's why Freddy comes for you.
Yeah, it's just a terrifying concept. Like even to me, like Paranormal Activity, like the first time I watched it, I thought like the sleeping scenes were very stressful to watch because even though nothing really happens, it's just because the idea of being asleep and something being there creeps me out.
Yeah.
But the scene where he's like having the dream and then all the ghosts are standing there and their mouths open and it's the alarm that goes off, that scene freaked the fuck out of me. And it's again that sharp sound change from Flanagan, and he's very fucking effective at scaring you with those. And they're jump scares, but they're not like where someone just slams their hands on the piano and you shit yourself.
Or a fucking cat jumps out going, ah!
Yeah, but they make sense and they are effective in the scene. What I think is so important about that particular movie is how it's talking about reality and mental health, because they convinced the brother that he was nuts. He was just imagining all this shit, right? And the sister has remained in the real world, has remained in normal society. Throwback to Mouth of Madness. And we
talked about this too beforehand.
And she's in normal society living, and she still believes it. Like this thing is evil. It's killing people. And the brother said that they put him in the asylum. And then with it ending, it looks like he murdered his sister. And just goes back to the fucking asylum, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's just this, and the thing is so evil, like it almost gets off on it. Like it's like, haha, like, and now the brother's just, and now what? He's nuts for the rest of his life. There's no way he's gonna not think that is what happened, right? Mm-hmm. And he's driving away, and then it shows him again as a kid driving away, and then that because he got blamed for it twice, right? Mm-hmm. And yeah,
I'm really happy you brought up that scene because I don't know if it was just me, but it kind of made me angry with the sister because she was so driven to, one, avenge the family name, and two, to prove that this mirror was evil and haunted and ruined their lives, that she did it at the expense of, one, her own life and the expense of her own brother's life, because now he's the one in the end who's going back to the asylum. He looked like he just murdered his family, right? So it was just so ruthless of the sister, but because she was so emotionally charged and so emotionally driven in this film, that she didn't care what it took to prove that this mirror was this haunted, evil entity. Yeah,
and then she leaves her broken brother there as a result because her drive, and he ends up taking the fall again because he took the fall for the death of the father, right?
And I like how you brought up about the mental illness aspect, the mental health illness, because the I forget his name, but the boy, he struggles with it because even when he's trying to recollect like some of the scenes that he's seen, it's almost deceptive because kids see things and interpret things through a different perspective than adults would. So there's already that and because we saw the mother go nuts too, so there's already that kind of seed of doubt planted that this could all be mental illness. And throughout the whole movie, the brother's trying to rationalize what the sister's saying. She's like, "Do you remember when this happened and this happened?" And the brother's like, "Yes, but this is scientifically explained because of this and because of that, because it's all just in our head. We made it up because we were kids and we were scared and we didn't understand what was going on." But so Flanagan makes you think, oh my God, that's the other twist and warp of reality, is not only the two timelines merging, but the fact that, hey, is this mental illness or is this actually happening, right?
I think on that point, I think the argument for that movie could be made either way. Like the film, it leaves it in such a state. He has murdered the sister, right? But he thought he was murdering the mirror, or destroying the mirror, right? Mm-hmm. The entity that's in the mirror, whatever the fuck that is. So I guess, like, you could kind of... And there's a fair argument either way, because you could say all of the supernatural shit was in his head, right? And that he was just mentally battling this thing, and the sister believed it was real. But I guess that the parts where the sister is experiencing stuff isn't really explained. Either way, I think you could kind of maybe swing it either way if I rewatched it.
I think so. Yeah.
Which is part of the effectiveness of the film.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the last two we want to talk about, I think this episode is going to be a bit longer than we wanted it to be, but that's okay.
Fuck me, yes.
Yeah, so we want to talk about...
That sounded dirty, but yes.
I want to talk about Haunting of Hill House. I love Bly Manor, but I have so much more to say about Haunting of Hill House. Bly Manor was effective, and I enjoyed it quite a lot, and a lot of people shit on it. It wasn't as scary. Yes, it was more about emotions and romance and that kind of thing. So was Hill House, but I feel like the other one was more about relationships between couples, whereas Hill House
family oriented
was more about relationships between family, siblings specifically, and that resonates more with me, obviously.
Not with me, because I hate him.
Yeah, she fucking hates me. But it resonates more with me specifically because it's a family of 5, and we're a family of 5.
Well, 5 kids and 2 adults, right?
Yeah.
The 2 parents and 5 kids.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's a family of 5 siblings, right? That's what I mean.
Yeah. Okay, I'm an idiot. Go on.
Yeah. So shut the fuck up. Let me stop. Let me talk. No. But no, seriously. So because it's about a family of 5 children, like, although I think there's 3 sisters, and it's 3 boys in our family, and there's
it's reverse, right?
Yeah, it's flipped. And there's no twins. Although you and Doug are pretty close in age.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Like, basically twins.
Yeah, you're like, what, 10 months apart?
Yeah, it's weird. Like, Mom, do you ever take a break?
Yeah. But,
That fucking, though. Gosh, my eyes! Oh, sorry, go on.
Leave back the window. There's a window right there. Anyway, fuck. I totally derailed my train of thought. So yeah, because it's about like a family of 5, and it's the oldest brother, is also a writer, writing about the trauma from the family, which is literally what I'm doing.
Really hits home.
Which I was doing before this came out, and then I watched the show, and I'm like, what the fuck? And it threw me off so much, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. But their ghosts and stuff are completely different, and the way he does it is very different. Mine's about an old god. Theirs is about a haunted house, right? So, but
haunted house collecting souls.
Yeah. It's like I guess it's kind of an old god on its own way, or whatever. It's a demon or something.
It's that kind of entity that Stephen King would write about.
Yeah, right? Like that house that Jake runs through, and then I think it's again in the Talisman and a couple.
It is, yeah. It
comes out in the dark. It's in the Dark Tower as well. This house thing that eats people's souls.
And it's no surprise that Flanagan has a lot of inspiration coming from.
Well, he's done 2 adaptations of King. He's definitely.
But King even he's very character driven in the way he storytells too. And,
yes.
And Flanagan's the
same
people
way. They wrote King writes 5 pages about a character and then kills him in the next chapter.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Because there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
If you're one of those people, fuck you. Stop shitting on King.
Stop shitting on. He's a fucking god.
Shitting on the master. Sitting on the master. Fuck you. Anyway, so Hill House for me was just the way it talks about inter-sibling trauma, and the older brother is so adamant that there's nothing supernatural going on. The family's all just crazy, right? The sibling, the twins, the ones that were the most affected by it, end up having the most problems with their lives. The brother ends up being a drug addict. Nell ends up being, she's always depressed and on medication, jumping
she's
all over.
She's anxious. She's scared. She's unorganized. Her life's a mess. She can't.
Yeah, and he makes the comment of her jumping from one spiritual path to another to find some kind of peace in her life, some kind of
healing, so she can move forward with her life.
Yeah, which she can't. I can relate to that one, but and there's other pieces of each of the siblings that I personally relate to, and I think that's also kind of why I feel the way I do about the story.
Yeah.
But then you have the middle 2 who have sort of experiences, but hate the older brother for exploiting the family, right? And everyone feels like he's exploiting them, because
he wrote the novel, he made a lot of money from the novel.
Yeah. So, but the way just the way it deals with like grief and trauma, like to me the most interesting character is the father. And they kind of hint at that in the show too, where the one character was like, I was most interested to hear about the father's perspective, right? And when they finally do talk about the father in that aspect, I think it's the episode where they're at the funeral and they're all fighting, and like Nell's ghost knocks her fucking casket over, and. I just get shivers thinking about it too, because there was because she goes missing in the house, and there's the scene where she's crying and screaming as a little girl, and she's like, I was standing there, no one could see me, and then it cuts, and at the end of the episode it cuts, and she's the ghost standing there, and they're all fighting and screaming, but no one can see her there.
Like Flanagan's transitions they're just like they leave everlasting emotional impacts. It's just, oh my god, it's.
The way those kids, and it's incredibly acted too, which
Absolutely.
Just makes it so much stronger and more effective. Just the use of sound, the one take. I mean, everyone always talks about the one take scene where it goes into the funeral home. I can't even talk. I'm so fucking worked up about this shit. But it goes into the funeral home and then back, and then it pans around and then back again, and it's all a single shot, and it's done so effectively for immersion. Like, you feel like you're there grieving with these characters. Like, it's so powerful, it's so effective, and I think it's just honestly the best character relationship with the audience that he's ever built. I feel like those characters, I don't think I've ever connected. It might just be because we're siblings and we've experienced our own childhood trauma,
and we're all very close and have our own
and we've had our own fallings out and differences as adults.
I mean, look at us, we fucking hate each other.
Yeah, can't stand this bitch. And but and then like rebuilding, and then all those kind of things, and you see that with them, right? And this, I don't know.
Sorry, can I jump in for one quick second?
Yeah.
The one funeral scene that you were talking about, where the camera is just following them, that's another one of his techniques I mentioned earlier, right? Where he's controlling his scene, and even though it's one long shot, he's moving the camera and just revealing things to you.
Yeah.
And he does it so superbly in every fucking episode of Hill House, man. Like, and again, like the close-ups of the characters in the background, we see the ghost, and then he's moving the camera down the hallway, and we see a ghost just standing there, and they're so easy to miss, right? Because they're not meant to be the foreground. The ghosts are all meant to fill that void in the background, to give us something to like, oh, eye catch. Sometimes those little kind of jump scares that are silent, that don't really make you scared, but just like, whoa, what the fuck was that? Because he's always just moving his camera and letting the audience see what he wants them to see.
But exactly. Right, exactly, and the reason why the ghosts, and not until towards the very end when it starts showing why the mother went nuts, right?
Yeah.
The ghosts are very representative of being the haunting of the family. The family itself is haunted. It's more about the family being haunted than it is about the house, right? There's just these vibes from them, right? So every time you see ghosts, it's almost like the memory of the kids seeing it, and the ghost represents the trauma of the event rather than the ghost being the ghost at the particular time, because it's always a different ghost. It's just until you actually see like the red-haired actress, I think it is, that goes nuts and kills her own baby or whatever, until you actually see her and like the old lady on the bed, there are no really defined ghosts. There's just these random faces and creepy things sitting in the background or whatever, and to me, that is more to represent the trauma of the moment and a memory of it for the kids than it is the actual ghosts haunting them, so to speak. For me personally, I think like one of the most effective scenes in the whole show is when the dad comes out and he shows from his perspective and he sees them all as kids.
I know. Oh my god!
Every time I see that,
got me in the feels.
That scene hits me every single time. Like it's just. Because, like, in his mind, they're still like
his babies.
Yeah, it's just how
they're still his vulnerable babies.
And he worked so hard to keep them safe and protect them, and it still all fell apart. And like, I just feel so bad for the father, like, because how else do you deal with that, right? Because it does look like mom went crazy, right? It does look like that, right? It does look like dad killed mom trying to save the kids, right?
Yeah.
That's how it looks, but that's not what happened, right? And so the dad trying to protect the kids and keep them safe from the exploitation of that, and just he failed, and like he couldn't. They all fell apart in their own way, right? They're all broken, right? Yeah, just the way the dad sees him is just so. He feels like he failed in a lot of ways, and he just couldn't. I don't know. That guilt lives with him. It's a ghost of his own.
I want to jump back to you when you said the scene about how he sees them all as kids, and to me that's Flanagan's way of saying, hey, like, this is trauma that these kids went through as children when you're super impressionable and your mind's like a sponge, and everything you see is always through some kind of lens of like mystery and unknown, because you see things but you're too young to really understand what you're seeing. And like the films we've already mentioned with Flanagan's work, Before I Wake and Oculus, how these kids faced trauma when they were young and how it affected them into adulthood, right? Every single one of them were affected in very differently kind of profound ways, of course. But again, this is so much about how the trauma these kids faced manifested into their own hindrances in life. Not maybe they're not always like a tangible thing, but it's definitely there, even with the, you know, how the characters may be hesitant to do or say something or to interact with each other because of a fear or trauma that they experienced together when they were kids. Somehow this trauma continues to manifest and fuck with their reality and fuck with the fact that they can't heal because they can't move on. And they end up going back to the house because they realize the only way to heal is to confront their past trauma. And together. They're united together. Yeah. You know, just like Midnight Mass, the whole idea of the cult is like, you know, the cult feels connected. It feels united by the priest. And the family doesn't necessarily feel connected because of anything else except each other, you know what I mean? And so they go back together because they realize the only way to heal is to confront this together. And I mean, it's not exactly a happy ending for every character, but yeah.
He touches on the religious themes in that one too, with the really religious groundskeepers who are, you know, saying, oh, you don't know about Jesus Christ or whatever else. And the mother's like, no, I taught my kids about every religion so that they could make their own choice, right? Yeah. So like, again, Flanagan's religious themes constantly come in to these things, even if they're minor. Yeah. For me, like some of the scenes there with the with the groundskeeper, they know something's up right there, right? Like, and they understand it in a different way, but they also, I don't know.
Just say what's on your mind.
I don't know, the scene with, I think one of the scenes that, like, when they both just die there at the end so they can be with their daughter, is just like it shows them, like, it shows them really old together, like walking up to the house because they know the daughter's ghost is there now.
She's trapped in the house.
Yeah, and like they just both go up there like old people and just die. Like, it's fucking traumatic. I don't know, the shit is, I don't know, man, it fucks me up. I've watched it 3 times and it fucks me up every time I watch it.
And they rather, the house is obviously evil, it's collecting souls and for no good reason, but this couple rather die in the house so they can be with the daughter whose soul is trapped in this house than die and have maybe the chance to pass on to a better afterlife.
They're Christians. They're giving
heaven,
up the idea of heaven. Yeah,
they're giving up that to go be with their daughter in this trapped house, which is essentially maybe a form of hell. Who knows, right? However a Christian may want to interpret it, but it's that decision to do that. I was like, you're right. It's fucking impactful. Yeah. Because I mean, when you're driven by religion, a lot of times people have very, very strong beliefs about what you do or don't do. Yeah. But they chose
I think, like, that,
something very contentious of a. Sorry,
no, yeah, exactly. That scene is more religious than people realize. Yeah. Maybe some people realize that it's a far more religious scene than what it appears to be on the surface, because they're forfeiting this eternal life and with God and whatever, because their daughter isn't there. So they don't want that anymore. Like, you know, and I'm not saying that they've renounced God or anything like that, but like they just chose, they would rather be in purgatory or whatever the fuck that thing puts them in, than be in an eternal life without her. And that's powerful shit. I don't know. But yeah. I think the theme you were talking about togetherness with Midnight Mass, it's almost the togetherness is actually a bad thing. Actually, it is a bad thing. It's the cult mindset, sheep thinking, programmed to think of whatever. Whereas in Haunting of Hill House, it's the opposite. The togetherness is the strength. When they are together, the house can't kill them. It can't feed on each of them by themselves or as a whole. It needs to pick them off one by one, right?
It's kind of like what Pennywise does to the group of the Losers Club.
Yeah.
Right? And again...
Sorry.
I was just saying, like, I know this is Flanagan's adaptation of a Shirley Jackson book, but he also uses a lot of that Stephen King way of telling stories of, you know, the united together, you know, when we're together, especially as kids and especially as siblings, because Stephen King writes a lot about the bond of children together and how it is their strength, right?
Yes.
And how they're vulnerable on their own, but they're strong in numbers. And for Hill House, it really hit home with us because, you know, us 5 kids, we've always kind of considered each other our wolf pack, and we've always been very tight and close. So to watch these kids go through this trauma and how they kind of not fight or hate each other into adulthood, but not necessarily, you know, have that same kind of bond anymore.
Yeah, there's contention.
And they've kind of all gone their own way, but they still kind of talk politely to each other and keep in touch. And just to see how the result of that, I was like, oh my goodness, I could not imagine not having my siblings in my life, or, you know what I mean? Like, maybe not having you would be cool, but...
Fuck off.
But it's sad to see how that trauma affected each of them, and then how in the end, like, they... Essentially, like, they're all strong characters. They had to overcome their own trauma so they could, reunite and then confront, but, I'm trailing off a little bit. It's just... It hits home with me so much, like it does with you, because of our sibling dynamic as well, right?
So. And they were all there to conquer it, right?
Yeah.
And even Nell was there, right, as a ghost.
My gosh!
They were all there to do it, right? And yeah, I don't know. It's good shit. It's really good shit, and it's really
touching.
Yeah. People are like, oh, it's too romantic for my taste. Like, whatever. Okay, well, fine. You're a cold-hearted prick. So, and I feel sorry for you because you're missing out on a lot in life if you don't know what that feels like. But anyway, so yeah, it's good stuff.
The only thing that's maybe it's romantic, but romanticizing horror and trauma in a sense. But
I think they mean that it was too emotional. Like it was too like the father kills himself to stay there, right? And then this it's about so much about feelings, and I don't know. I think all the best horror really is. I mean, I kind of get people like, oh, blah, blah, blah. Because, you know, and even the people that go on about slasher films, too, like, they bug me. Because, like, even when they get slasher films, they still bitch about those movies, too. Like, oh, this blah, blah. Like, do you like films? Do you like watching them? Like, maybe you just watch them to bitch about them. Like, you know, I bitch about some movies, but, like, I have what I like. Like, it just seems like some people just like nothing. Like, they just...
I like Flanagan and I like King because I like how they write emotionally charged stories.
Yeah.
It's something that I can connect with or relate to or feel or experience. Something that is so realistic to people because we all have those kinds of strong emotions. We all go through trauma and it's very relatable.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Horror has stages, right? And, you know, phobias are completely irrational, whatever. You know, you're afraid of the moon, or you're afraid of whatever. It's just completely irrational, irrelevant things. Fears are more realistic, you know, but they're exclusive to you, right? Like, I'm afraid of whatever, like, you know, and I'm not talking about phobias. You know, spiders and heights are my phobias, but like legitimate fears, like I don't like being asleep. Right? Things like that.
There's a huge difference.
Yeah, big difference. And it's for me personally, right?
Yeah.
Whereas horror, it's rooted deeply in realism. Real things that you can really feel, and characters are the number one way to drive that thing. If you feel for the characters and you can relate to how they are feeling and the horror that they're experiencing, that is true horror, for me anyway. And I will die on that fucking hill, because the stuff that has always stuck with me the most has been character charged every single time.
Yeah.
Even simple things like The Thing and Mouth of Madness, you know, they're still character driven, right? It's about the characters. It's about how they interact. It's how they feel, how they break down. It's about the characters. You can, either way, you can directly relate to them or not, or the movie or story pulls you in enough that you can feel like they're feeling, or you can understand how they're feeling. That's the most effective horror, because you can't, it can't actually hurt you, right? It's not real, but to make it feel real, that's the true effect.
You also don't have any control over your emotions. You're going to feel what you feel, right? And that's horrifying.
And that's
Being
why Hill
human
House is so
horrifying.
effective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Being human is horrifying. Exactly.
Yeah.
Because the worst things to happen to you are going to be done either by yourself or by somebody else, and it's always on an emotional or traumatic level like that. Right. I could gush on and on and on about fucking Hill House. Like, it's my favorite Flanagan work. I know Midnight Mass is the one that other people think is the best one, but it's just my personal favorite. I could dedicate a whole episode to Hill House, but that's not what we're here to do today. Today we wanted to talk about Flanagan and his work. So this is we're going to move on to what people are saying is his best work, Midnight Mass.
So one thing with Midnight Mass is, I mean, if you've seen it, you know, but it is a show that is so intelligent with its script, and it's very, very heavy in dialogue. It's very much like reading a Stephen King novel. There's a lot of dialogue in King's books, right?
Yeah.
And the dialogue all serves a purpose. You really have to be paying attention to the script, because like all of Flanagan's work, Midnight Mass is such a slow burn, and there's not a lot of action going on. There's some big scenes, we can get to them, you know, specifically with the priest at the beginning when we see how he's converted, and then the ending. So there are some big dramatic scenes that really make up a lot of the big cinematography we all want to see, that kind of pays off for the story itself. But the script is so intelligent, and the way he utilizes religion and the idea of this whole kind of cult-like mentality that we see in this show is just so well done through the manipulation of scripture to fit the agenda of this cult.
Yeah.
And it just blows my mind. One, not only is Flanagan obviously very well biblically versed, but he knows how to take those scriptures, and specifically even something like communion, something that's supposed to be so holy and sacred, and manipulate it in such a horrifying way.
Yeah, I think with the scripture in particular, I think that in itself is a pretty loaded attack, because that's quite often, for people that are no longer Christian, one of the main things that drives them away, other than the fucking persecution and, you know, the segregation and all the other shit that they do.
The conditions.
If you're a Christian, I'm not sorry. And the one part about it is the cherry picking of scripture to make it beneficial for what you are feeding as your own agenda, rather than what God actually fucking wants.
It's the imposed narrative.
Yeah. And this show takes that to a fucking whole new level by taking something that has generally been considered the opposite of God, demonic, satanic, whatever. Dracula is a curse. He's cursed by God.
Yeah.
Right? So now in this situation, they're
Vampire's
flipping it.
An angel. What?
Yeah, like completely. All right. And I love that they never use the word vampire, though.
Right.
Like, it never gets said. Like, you know what it is.
Yeah.
But they never once say that word. Not once in the script. And I love that so much. Like, it's just...
And they don't need to.
Yeah, it just bogs it down with extra shit that you already know what the fucking monster is. I don't need an exposition of what a vampire is.
Yeah,
right?
And you and I have had this discussion about Flanagan before, even before we decided to do this episode. We talked about Flanagan as the kind of director that doesn't insult his audience by over-explaining something.
Exactly.
And I think those were actually your words that I'm reciting.
He does. He respects his audience's intelligence enough to not have to give us a 20-minute exposition or an entire episode exposition on what the fuck a vampire is.
Yeah.
We have years and years and years and years of lore. We don't need mythology and everything. We don't need an episode explaining what it is. Mm-hmm. Right? It's just dumb. And what we do get instead is why the priest became a vampire, right? And that is so much better. It's so much more effective.
Talk about that a little bit more, yeah. I love how he's out on a pilgrimage and he's basically lost to his own death. Essentially, he thinks he's gonna die.
Yeah. We were talking about like how we both feel that's basically like his death quest or whatever. He's gone to Damascus pilgrimage in the Middle East to just die. Basically, he's nuts. He's losing control of reality, and the little bit that's left of him, he just wants to die in the Holy Land or whatever. Doesn't directly say that, but it's, I don't know, it was kind of implied to me, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then he runs into death in the fucking cavern, or the ruins.
How morbid is that? Yeah. He essentially is looking for death. He knows he's ready to die. His mind, he's probably like some kind of early signs of dementia. And so his mind is constantly wandering. That's why he kind of wanders off and gets lost. And essentially he knows, he's like, this is my time. I'm going to die. And he thinks he's going to find death in the traditional terms of dying and leaving our world. But what does he find? He finds death manifested as a fucking vampire.
What's awesome about that is, like I was saying with them not saying vampire, is while he's giving that monologue and and showing the vampire feeding on him, and then he just says, just one word just kept coming to my mind over and over again. And you think he's going to say vampire, but he doesn't. He says angel. Yeah. And it's just it's so fucking eloquent. I love it.
Exactly. The script is so eloquent.
Yeah.
It's so
the way he writes the dialogue and then what he's showing, like or even just we were talking about sound before. Riley aside, because we already talked about that, but
that scene in the boat.
Yeah, I like how they're always doing like a hymn or just some hymnal like chorus going, and it's showing like nice things that are happening at the church, and then it's showing the vampire ripping someone apart in like another scene, and it just jumps back and forth to these like different while the hymn's going, and it just it's funny to me because in a sense it's almost kind of showing ignorance in a lot of our naivety in a lot of ways, like
that contrast.
Yeah, like it's just this sharp, everything's beautiful because we're at church, meanwhile the thing that you're praising is killing somebody in the next room over. Like or like when he's pouring the blood into the communion, and it's the writing is so good.
To me, it's almost symbolic about how religion can be an abusive tool. Or it can also be like a way to find peace and solace, because like these people, like you said, that we're seeing that contrast of like, they're in the church and they're singing their hymns and they're having a good time, and then you see like the brutality of this vampire feeding, and the contrast of them shows those two opposite ends of the spectrum of what religion can be. It can be an abusive tool, or it can be your point of solace and peace, right? And a lot of times the two will collide at some point.
Yeah.
Like the ending of that show.
Yeah. So again, like big spoilers, the ending dealing with specifically the purity of the truest version of oneself is basically what it's dealing with, right? And when almost the entire town is turned into a vampire, right? Through the communion, and then they go fucking Jim Jones Kool-Aid and they all die, right? Now, some of them get attacked and die and then come back, but all of there's literally a switch within the people. You can see the people that are good, like hearted in their soul and in who they are, and the people that are bad or susceptible to give in to bad or negative forces, right? The one guy, like you were saying, it's the show plays it to almost feel bad for him, but you don't. And when he's like, I killed my wife and my kids or whatever, but then you see the other ones that didn't do that, right?
Had the control on
like Riley's parents and the ones that were super devout the whole time, right? Who got mad at their son for not going to church and shit
and taking communion.
And then exactly, but then they are the ones who are the most actually the most holy people there, I would say. Well, whatever, holy. They're the most pure people out of the other, and then the other ones who seem like they're, the Jesus going, loving, happy go, and they're the ones that the quickest ones to turn and kill people, right? So it's kind of a pretty. That's
the system of abuse that religion can be, right?
That's the pretty blatant and not that well hidden, but it's not supposed to be metaphor of the whole show, right?
And these people, like you said, like some of them weren't. Not that they weren't able to not kill their family after being turned into a vampire. They chose to kill their family. Everything is a choice. People. Yeah, and it kind of shows how these people were so consumed in this religion and the idea of divinity and the apocalypse and being part of these miracles that were being performed, that they were just so consumed in this cult that ended up destroying them because
they were prideful.
Yeah, like people can be prideful sheep, honestly.
They thought they were the chosen of God because an angel came to them and was going to make them... And that's where the show changes its pace quite a bit, is when Riley dies and Father Priest starts... Priest?
Prius? No, Prius is the fucking car.
It's I think Prius. It's got a T. It's double T at the end. I think it's Priet or Priot, whatever. Anyway, he starts giving this Soldiers of God rant. Yeah. It's a rant at this point. It's not really a sermon anymore. Now it's become a fucking rant about conquering the fucking world. And that's when you find out it's his lover, the love of his life, basically walks out and says, "That's not the man.
That's not my priest." She says, "Yeah,
because that's not who he was." And that's kind of one of the moments where he starts to change, like his whole shtick changes at that point.
And I think at that point too,
his faith starts wavering.
Yes, and that's a good segue into my next point. You're getting the finger pointed at you, son. I like how you brought that up about the priest, that at that speech is when he starts to change, and that's after Riley's death too. And I think at that point is when we see the priest actually struggling with his own faith. And I thought that was kind of interesting, because throughout the whole show we see how faith in a sense is really deconstructed, and we see that very specifically with Riley's character, how he almost questions God and even the existence of a God, because why did I live as a drunk driver who killed an innocent woman? Why am I the one to live and she's the one to die? And he really struggles with that.
Then he blatant just becomes an atheist.
Yeah, and then he's like, because there's no
then
higher
he
power.
does just denounce God at that point.
Yeah, and I think the show does a really good job at showing people's faith and then also deconstructing it. And again, that comes back down to the really clever way that this script is crafted and executed through dialogue.
Yeah. And, I've read a lot of reviews and a lot of people talking about this show. And some people, like, I've read some crazy shit, like people saying it was like a metaphor for COVID and shit like that. Like,
I read that too.
And I was like,
I think because a lot of religious people are like, the only cure I need for COVID is Jesus.
Yeah, well, maybe. Like, I don't know. It was just a weird analogy for me. The one that pissed me off the most, though, were people were saying that the show was too preachy. And you and I talked a lot about this because, okay, coming from us, we were raised in the cult. We don't have a lot of patience for preaching. The show is not preachy, like, at all. If you think it's preachy, you're missing the point. The show is done in such a way to show you how easy it is to be manipulated and controlled by cult-like thinking. Yeah. And how easy people can just fall in line and just, oh, it's okay because so-and-so said so, and therefore I can do horrible things and it's okay. Like, and that's literally the mindset towards the end. Like, it's okay, I can kill somebody because I'm chosen, and that's how they think, and it's been fed into them over all this time, right? It's just it's not a preach. It's not it's preaching, but not to convert you. All right, it's trying to teach you that it's easy to be controlled. Right?
Yes. Is how easily is that cult manipulated by a priest who's been misled by an angel? A priest has been misled.
Even when they find out he's been lying to them.
Yeah.
Like, they find out that, like, oh, he's, I've been chosen by God, I've been resurrected, right? And, like...
Because the divinity, because their new bodies as a vampire, they see and hear and feel things differently. The senses aren't heightened. Like, oh, my body's been divine, or it has become divine, right? And so they're just so blinded by the fact that they think that this religion has healed them and ascended them, and it's not at all.
Yeah.
It's the exact opposite.
Even when they're watching horrific things happen, like, with the horrific things that it causes, they're still like, oh... They're, like, shocked at first, and then, oh, okay, and then they just go along with it. Like, it's perfectly fine to rip someone apart. Like, why not? It's just, it's strange. Like, but the point is that it's that easy for some people to get mind controlled. And it's not just with religion. It happens with politics. It happens with corporations. It happens with branding. It happens with a lot of things.
It happens with capitalism. Oh, sorry.
People get...
My agenda's coming out.
Mine too. It's very easy to be mind controlled and manipulated, right? And that's just, maybe that's the COVID thing they're talking. The vampirism's the vaccine, and the vaccine's a hoax. But whatever it may be to you, I really don't want to get into the politics of COVID. But the point is that it's showing how easy it is to be controlled. How easy it's almost like we were talking about how, like, with Midsummer does indoctrinate you, right? You are indoctrinated into their cult because you don't feel bad for the people that they kill. You don't. You're like, oh yeah, fuck them, they deserve it, right?
Yeah, quite literally.
And then so the true horror of Midsummer is at the end when they're killing all these people. You're like, yeah, okay, sure. Like, you've been. I mean, I think most people anyway were like, yeah, okay, you're rooting for the main character. I forget her name now. Is it Danny?
Yeah, Florence Hugh's character?
Yeah, her name's Danny, I think.
It's Danny.
Yeah, you're, like, rooting for her character, and then you feel relieved when she gets this catharsis, and you're like, oh, good for her. She's finally accepted. And, like, she's joined a fucking cult, and you're like, yeah, good. Like, you've joined it, too.
And her boyfriend who was raped, dies, and we're like,
he was a piece of shit, but, like, he didn't deserve to fucking die. Like, and then I talked about that before, but, like, anyway, yeah, like it's about mind control, right? So I just kind of hijacked that.
Well, because we're talking about cults, right? Yeah, and
it's kind of my forte.
And that's one of the things too with this vampire, this angel is he. I think this is my own kind of interpretation of it is that perhaps this vampire sees humans. I mean, humans tend to be a weaker species. We tend to be a very arrogant species, and that a lot of times makes us dumber and weaker than
and easier to control.
Other species makes us easier to control because we do tend to be sheep, and we do tend to run to the light, like, oh my God, tell me pretty things. Is there salvation, right? And this vampire actually...
Tell me pretty things. That's a good...
Yeah. And this vampire kind of feeds on that idea of humans being the weaker, less intelligent species that's always looking for hope. And a lot of times horror movies and horror themes are all about all hope is lost. So for all of a sudden for this religion to bring some kind of aspect of hope for these people, the vampire kind of feeds on that. And
that are going through a hard time, right?
Yeah. And he uses that. And I thought that was really, really, really clever. And maybe it's my own bit of interpretation of the vampire. But why else would he... Like, and there's no motivation. Like,
no, he never speaks.
Yeah, and Flanagan...
The lead vampire never says a fucking word. And never knew, not through telepathy, not through anything. You never have any idea what his intentions are.
Yeah.
None.
Which is cool.
Yeah. Unless he's being... Like, he's using Priet as a fucking... familiar or something to carry out his will. I don't know, but like...
Well, he's definitely an instrument, yeah.
Yeah, but like it's never very clear in that sense, right? And I think Father is like a particularly interesting character because his intentions, like, he's actually brainwashed by his faith to the point where he thinks a vampire is an angel, but then he realizes that it's not, and then like rejects his faith. and it's so like he's such a strange character, and like he goes through this gigantic arc of like ready to die. Okay, no, I've been resurrected. Now I got to lead the army of God, and I'm renouncing God. Like within like a couple of weeks, like it's just like he goes through these huge, and he talks about spiritual growth. Like I've felt moments of great spiritual growth in my life, and like it's right there. And but yeah, the slow consumption of turning into a vampire too. Like so, like it's not just the faith aspect of it. It's this. So, we were talking about like seeing that slow change. Usually in movies, it's they're dead, they come back. Yeah, they're dead, they come back. Now they're vampires. Yeah. Whereas in this, it's this slow. He's at the town is all slowly becoming vampires, right? Mm-hmm. It's a very different spin on vampirism, which I thought was very fun.
It's like a gradual descent into vampire, into madness, like the gradual descent into madness in the mouth of madness. We always
you just love that fucking movie. Eh?
I can't not.
We got to bring in Carpenter somehow into every episode.
In the Mouth of Madness is also one of my all-time favorite movies ever. Yeah, so I always bring it back to that.
When you mentioned the thing about the sacrament, about communion, what's interesting about that, and even the fact that he's a priest and in a church, is that generally
and willingly poisoning his followers.
Generally speaking, in vampire mythology, churches are a place they can't go. Communion and faith is a weapon against them, right? Like even in Salem's Lot, the whole thing with the priest when he puts the cross up and the vampire just breaks it and says you have to have faith for those things to work, right? And so it's kind of that same, but in this, it's quite the opposite. The faith is now the weapon against the people, and the vampire is completely like it's not affected by those things like at all, which I thought was a very interesting spin on the vampire mythology. Now you've taken something holy and made it unholy. And that, I don't know, I thought that was awesome. And
maybe that's where some people I've talked to that have watched the show told me, it's like, does Flanagan hate religion? Is he openly bashing it? I'm thinking, well, the fact that the vampire is seemingly unaffected by any religious kind of artifact or sacrament, I'm like, maybe there is a bit of like fuck you religion in there.
I mean, probably. I
mean, like it's a really good metaphor to use a vampire, something that's a curse by God, to come back into a religious aspect.
Yeah, like traditionally speaking, vampires are a curse, or they're demonically motivated, or whatever. Like it's always something evil. Like it's
they're a monster. Yeah.
Evil. Mm-hmm. Right.
And one kind of note I'd like to end it on, maybe we should start to wrap it up, because we're getting pretty fucking long here.
It's our first one back, though, so suck it
up. Be nice to us. I always like to kind of end it on a note of cinematography. And because we talked about how Midnight Mass, the whole story arc is very gloomy and kind of filled with, emotion that makes you want to be like, fuck, man, like this is sad shit that's happening. And even if you look at the preachy part of it, you're like, okay, the preachiness is annoying, but the struggle that some of these characters like Aaron and Riley are actually facing, there's a lot of emotion to be felt there. So the whole film, or the whole season is very gloomy, and I love how the whole show, the visualization of the show actually mirrors the gloominess of the storytelling. And to me, the whole show kind of looked like it was almost filmed at midnight, and which is kind of funny because it's called Midnight Mass. And even though the Midnight Mass doesn't actually really happen until the end of the show, it still kind of feels like the whole show is filmed in an evening. It's always kind of overcast and dark and gloomy. And the way that Flanagan utilizes light here, where he's got his characters and his actors in the front, and his backlighting is filled in so nicely that you see all the kind of shadows that the backlighting casts to really give that kind of gloomy nighttime feel of the film. And I really liked that because it keeps you, the story keeps you feeling gloomy, and then the visualization and the way he shows his story is all very gloomy on film. And I love that, just seeing those shadows cast, even though it's probably like noon, and they're going to morning church on Sunday, but everything still feels like it's gloomy evening, nighttime sequences. And I thought he did that really well. It was a nice way to kind of keep you in that emotional roller coaster ride of the show. But
no, I agree, and I think the times that he uses light in an optimistic way isn't until the very end. when the whole fucking village is on fire.
Yeah, and finally a big bright sunrise,
and I like, everyone says, oh, they closed it up, everything's wrapped up. I mean, she cut the vampire, but it never showed him dying. I'm just gonna put that up there.
Throwing that out
there. Yeah, I know his wings were tattered and shit, and he was all like fucked up as he was flying, but didn't show him die. I'm not saying they're gonna make a sequel. I think the story closed off, and I think that was fine. But the implication of the vampire actually being destroyed was subtle, but not necessarily confirmed. So.
And seeing is believing. If you didn't see him die, you can't believe that he's dead.
Doesn't matter, because even in horror, it doesn't matter if you're dead.
It's true. I mean, look at
Jason. Michael Myers.
But so should we wrap it up there? Actually.
Yeah, I think it's good. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it's been a long episode, but we're really happy to be back at it after many moons.
Yeah, and I mean, we decided to jump in on something that was a little bit longer of an episode than we expected to really be, but we were like, oh, we're gonna talk about Midnight Mass. And well, let's talk about Flanagan, because like talking about directors and like their actual work is more of our thing than just analyzing one film.
Yeah.
I mean, we did The Witch, but that's really kind of been the exception. But yeah, we kind of more thematic in how we do things. So
yeah.
But yeah, so we're happy to be back doing it. This one was kind of a long time coming. We were going to do something completely different and then change course all of a sudden.
We watched Midnight Mass. We're like, that's our next episode.
Yeah, we're going to talk about this. Yeah. So, yeah, because we had... so the other plan will come next. But
yeah.
Because we were all prepared for that, and then we decided to shift gears the last minute. So, but considering we shift gears last minute, we still had a lot to fucking say.
Like last minute, like as in 2 days ago.
Yeah, like literally 2 days ago. So we were sitting at the kitchen table, and we're just talking about it, and we're like, we should just do this as the episode. We're just
having our morning coffee.
Yeah,
we're like...
Fuck it, let's do this. So that's how that happened. But yeah, we're happy to be back, and we're looking forward to covering more content. We are also going to try something a little bit different moving forward. We're going to start so that we can continue to do these episodes. If we want to have them an hour and a half long, we can do that, but without boring you to death. We're going to start cutting them up. So you can either watch it as one long piece, or you can watch the clips that we're going to put out. We're going to go back and edit some of the old ones, and then moving forward, the rest of them are going to be cut as well. So as we switch focus in topics, you'll have a fresh clip to watch. So some of them may be 10 minutes, some of them may be 15, some may be 20, whatever. But you'll have a separate clip for each topic as we shift. I don't know how I'm going to do it for The Witch, but I'm going to do that one last. But like, I'm going to go through and edit them out, and that's probably how we're going to do the show moving forward. To kind of, we kind of got back to roots a little bit. We kind of just having a very basic setup and everything.
It feels more natural, and it's more personable to us, and we enjoy this kind of. But there's been a busy summer, so we've been bouncing back and forth trying to set up different sets and get things ready. So
yeah. And we still have stuff coming. I've personally have shifted focus quite a bit. I've been doing lightning reviews over the other normal reviews just because they don't get views, and I don't like spending 2 hours doing something and then nobody watching it, so it's pointless. So the lightning reviews get views, so I do those, and then we do the podcast because it also gets views. So those are the facts. If you prefer the shorter reviews from me, or the more in-depth reviews, I need to actually hear that, because like I don't see
reassurance.
No, it's not reassurance. It's just it's pointless to do them. And I spend 2 hours or more sometimes researching and editing, coming up with a script, and then nobody watches it. So it's like, what's the point, right? So, anyway.
It's true. It's fair enough.
I'd rather do the shorts where they get views.
Even like doing the podcast, there's a lot of preparation that goes into doing this, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. We're also looking at audio only stuff. We haven't really confirmed one way or the other, but we're looking at options to have a audio version of the podcast only. We were trying to get our sound situation sorted out a little bit better, but as the set keeps changing and the studio keeps changing, we don't really have a way to make that concrete. So
yeah.
We're just gonna fucking wing it.
But we persevere in the face of adversity.
Yes.
Which is like, sure, if that's what helps you sleep at night. Yeah. I don't sleep, so fuck it.
No. Booze helps me. That's gets me through it. No.
There you go. It's like a true Canadian. Got a twofer. It's more like wine.
Yeah, I'm a wine guy. I'm a Pinot Gris man myself.
Fair enough. Well, okay, so we'll leave it there. Guys, thanks for tuning in. We know this was a long one, but we hope you enjoyed it. We covered a lot of material. I talked a lot. I'm sure you hate my voice by now. But thanks so much for listening and supporting us.
Yeah, as always, we definitely appreciate the support, and thank you for bearing with us all this time. Hopefully this episode was a nice comeback, and we will be continuing to release monthly, I think, is the plan. I think we got a little over our heads before.
Yeah, because there's so many other content things that we want to do as well.
Yeah,
so
we're working on other side projects that are still coming. So yeah, the podcast kind of took a back seat for a bit, but anyway, we're back at it, and we're gonna try to do one at least every month. So. And
guys, biggest thing, happy Halloween! Woo! This is our national holiday.
I mean, it's when all the normies pretend to be as spooky as the rest of us. And we're just spooky all year round. And then really, like, this is our time to really show the fucked up people we are. If you've seen my Instagram, you're probably like, this bitch is weird. Mine too, actually. Love it. Okay, guys, thanks so much. Oh, sorry, I just cut you. I was like, fuck up, bye. Yeah. All right, that's good. No gives a shit about you and your Instagram. All right, peace out, fuckers. Okay, bye. Hey, motherfucker, put your head there. What up? Put your head lower. Oh, yeah? My head lower? Is this low enough to the ground? I would have fucking put it to the floor. Sick. Don't smoke crack. Right? I kind of forget now. Stupid back. Happy we brought... I'm really... We're happy we brought that scene. Where is Hush? Where are you? Need my notes. Take too many notes. That's the thing. Thunderclap! So what I was gonna say... Oh, the battery is dying. Oh, fuck. Should we start over? Yeah, let's start again. The fucking battery just about to shit itself, mate. Shh. A clown isn't gonna kill you. Another human being is. Love you, Pennywise. Put it to the floor, motherfucker. Let the bodies hit the floor. Put my head through the floor. Put my body out the door. Put your head up your asshole. Okay. Can I hit record on that, or is I just stupid? It's recording. Sick! I'm wondering why I don't end at all. Fucking stab me in the face. It's because you've got Bruce on your shirt. Yeah, Bruce Campbell. Bruce and Bruce. I just got Sam. I don't have a preposterous chin, but I have a preposterous beard. Stop taking my description of Bruce Campbell. It's a preposterous chin. Every time I describe him, like, he's got a preposterous chin. Preposterous chin. Oh, I believe it's called a cleft. Anyways, let's get going. I forgot to hit the fucking button there. Okay. Great, let's clap. Clap. Or is it? Do-do-do. Is it recording? You got Sparky's attention. He's like, woof woof. You want to keep going? I thought we were getting closer, so we'll cut this out. I'm sorry. I thought we had time. Well, if you want to switch films, we should stop and start again. Okay. Okay. Can I just slap your mama?